Today, I want to tell you about a really beautiful thing that Jesus Christ did. It happened during the Last Supper in the upper room. And it really was the Last Supper because Jesus knew that he was going to be betrayed that night and that he would be murdered the very next day. In fact, he'd been preparing his disciples for this time for weeks. He'd been telling them that he'd be betrayed in Jerusalem and then murdered, but they wouldn't believe him because how could such a thing be possible? And so now at the Last Supper, before he eats with his disciples, the Bible says that he washed his disciples' feet. Now, Christians understand this to mean to be an example of how Jesus was humble, and so we should follow in his footsteps and be humble with one another as well. And that's true, but the meaning of this goes way beyond this. It's so much more beautiful even than that. You see, we know that Jesus taught using parables, but Jesus also taught, and the Bible is full of this, of acted parables. You see, actions speak louder than words, and what Jesus did that evening there in the upper room was an acted parable. He washed his disciples' feet. This is something that only slaves did. No one touched someone else's feet willingly. In that culture, just like in Middle Eastern culture today, your feet are the most disgusting part of you. They're dirty. They're the most dishonorable part of you. If you want to insult someone today in a Middle Eastern culture, you throw your shoe at them or you kick them with your feet. That's like a huge insult. But Jesus took on the role of a slave. Only slaves touch someone else's feet. And what happened here is that Jesus was foreshadowing exactly, step by step, what would happen to him the next day. The first thing that Jesus did, the Bible says, when he washed his disciples' feet, is he took off his robe. Exactly like the next day at Calvary, the soldiers ripped his robe off him because Jesus Christ died naked there on that cross. He gave everything he owned. The only thing he owned in this world was that robe, that beautiful robe, and he gave it for you and for me. And it becomes a robe of righteousness if you and I accept it. Then the Bible says that he bent down to wash his disciples' feet. Well, isn't that just what he did at Calvary? Now, we know he had already bent down to come down from heaven to earth to be one with you and one with the world. But this went way beyond that. He went as low as could be, because that next day at Calvary, the soldiers threw him on the ground onto the timbers of the cross to nail his hands and feet down before they lifted that cross up to the sky. So yes, Jesus bent down. And the next thing that he did is he extended his hands to touch and to wash his disciples' feet. And isn't that exactly what happened the next day when he extended his hands there on the cross at Calvary and he reached the whole world with his washing, his love, and his purity. And when Jesus Christ touches your feet, the most disgusting parts of you, the dirtiest, the most shameful parts of your life, he makes them clean. Yes, he touches your feet. And if you accept what he did at Calvary, you can be clean today.